Okay, so hello everyone. I will try to make this a very short talk. It's basically a data talk on a data set of, or on real parochial altruists, as you might call them, namely war heroes of the last century, basically. US American war heroes of the last century, 60% of whom gave their lives for their country in 4 wars: World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. Okay? What I have is data on the individual level on 988 individuals. I collected basically all biographical information which I could find online, for example, from Ancestry.org, from the enlistment records, from Wikipedia, from everything that you can from every source basically that you can find online. Okay. In addition, for all of these heroic actions, for all of these 988 heroic actions, the official citations exist. That means documents which describe the heroic action and the context of the heroic action for all of these 988 cases. So what I'm trying to do basically is exploring, or what I'm doing is I'm exploring this data set, of course with evolutionary theoretical, or with evolutionary theory in the back of my head. I'm exploring this data set, testing if effects or if signs of effects which you would expect given evolutionary theory can be found in this data. If we find something, then we take these effects which we find in the data into the lab and try to establish if they are real causal effects or if they're just correlations. For one effect, which I'll mention on the next slide, we already did this and were able to establish that there is a causal effect behind this. But some of these findings which I'll present, which I found using this data, still are in the correlational state. Okay? What I found so far using the data is that surviving Medal of Honor recipients of World War II seem to have sired more children. If you compare them to a random sample of regular World War II veterans. That's published this year. We find asymmetries in the kinds of heroic actions between attacks and defenses when we code the information about the kinds of heroic actions from the citations, and we find higher altruism during defenses. We also ran an experiment where we manipulated whether people perceive themselves more on the offensive or the defensive side of a conflict, and found that that increases altruism for the in-group. Robert will be talking about that tomorrow. Then finally, we found that self-sacrifice, which we measure as, or we use a proxy for self-sacrifice, which is covering incoming grenades or other explosive devices with your own body in order to protect comrades. We find that self-sacrifice is more frequent during defenses, more likely to be committed by younger soldiers, and more likely to be committed by Marines. Also published this year. Now, let me give you a brief overview of unpublished observations in this data set. We find that high-rank soldiers in the data set come from and have progeny with male-biased sex ratios. You could take this as an indication of higher testosterone levels in military leaders, and basically that's just a replication of an effect which has been found by Müller and Mesur back in the 90s, but it's also true for Medal of Honor recipients. So that's something you can observe in this data set too. And then we find that singles seem to have been more likely to voluntarily enlist. Probably not too surprising, but you can also see that in the data set. Then we see, or there is an indication at least, that surviving World War I, World War II, and Korea Medal of Honor recipients seem to exhibit increased longevity, right, compared to the US average if you control for year of birth. We're currently working on really putting together a representative sample for comparing this, but if you take a brief superficial look at the longevity of the heroes, of the surviving heroes, I should say, then they live longer than the US average. And finally, Medal of Honor recipients are more likely to come from rural areas within the US. That's compared to drafted soldiers, but in this respect they are representative of voluntary enlistees. Okay? And finally, one thing that's usually asked, we do not find any differences in education between Medal of Honor recipients and regular veterans. That's just data we have, so we can compare, but we do not find anything. What I would like to do with the data set is I would really like to complete and extend this data set. At the moment, the data set is not really complete because I only have access to online sources. So I'm really looking for help with access to the official military personnel records. So if you can help me out with that, that would be extremely appreciated. Or if you know of any additional sources of biographical information on these people, then I would also really appreciate tips. A more representative control sample is needed, I said that. And in case you are interested in studying heroic actions during war, there's a lot more information in the citations than what I used so far. So the citations are all there. If you have an idea what can be tested using the citations, let's do it. And I'm always up to collaborations using this data set, of course, and that's it.